Genesis chapter 42. Sometimes a family reunion or a family reconciliation can take a while. And it happens in steps. Stuff has to be dealt with. And we're going to see that with Joseph and his brothers and his father. There's going to be steps into their reconciliation and reunion. Because a lot has happened in that family. In how the brothers treated Joseph, how they lied to Jacob, and all that was going on in that family. It's going to take a while because none of these brothers realized what God had been doing in Joseph's life. But God created these circumstances that brings Jacob's sons, Joseph's brothers, to Egypt and gets them back in contact with each other. So we think, well, it took a famine before they came to Egypt, and then how God worked it all out. And sometimes people that we would like to have a good relationship with, we would like to maybe reconcile with them. Our own family, a lot of times, or we think about friends or people at church, and we would like to reconcile with them. Sometimes it's not up to us, because in this situation there was really nothing, up until this point that we read tonight, there was nothing Joseph could do. God had to work out all the circumstances. And there had to be a famine that affected the whole region before this process could even begin. But it was something God had to do. Now, I think it's hard for us sometimes to realize within our family when there's been some brokenness and hurt and wrongdoing, that it can be hard to reconcile. And it comes a lot of times where there's nothing we can do about it ourselves. Except be ready, be right with God ourselves, be living for Him and being in His will and being faithful to Him. We've seen that in Joseph's life. He was faithful to God in everything that happened, the good and the bad. Whether he was in prison or second in command, he was being faithful to God. And he had to wait until God worked things out to bring his brothers to Egypt. And so, when we think about that, sometimes there's nothing you can do to fix things with people until God has done something to cause them to need it or want it. And all we can do is try to walk with the Lord and be right with Him and always be ready for what He does. That we will not hold on to grudges, or not hold on to hurt, not hold on to disappointment, but just be ready for God to work. And then when He does, we see it, we're ready for Him to do it. Don't you think that's an important thing to understand? That there's sometimes nothing we can do to try to reconcile or have a family reunion. We have to sometimes wait on God to work and to do His will and only what He can do. And I know that some of you have shared things with me. I know that there are some of you that, or quite a few, that deal with that. And you would like to see things change. And for the most part, I think the ones that I know about, you've done what you can do. But now it's just a matter of God doing what He can do. And that's encouraging. So when we look at this, Joseph's brothers some of them wanted to kill him, but they ended up selling him into slavery. And so we have to remember, God can bring good out of the evil. When people, we talk about this a lot, what He will say, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. And we'll eventually get to that in this story. But God can do that. But what part of that is up to us? As we think about Joseph, we think about this story. If God's going to bring good out of evil, what are the things that determine if that can happen or not? And what part of it, if God's doing His work, which He will do, What determines whether or not he can turn something that was bad or that somebody meant for evil in our life? What determines or what's our part in God being able to do that? Any thoughts about that? What's our part in God turning evil to good?
You got to trust Him.
Absolutely.
Continued prayer. Never give up.
Yes. And I've told y'all before about one of the professors I had at Liberty who his father had pretty much just written him off because he got saved and started being a preacher, and his father was so mad at him for doing that he wouldn't have anything to do with it. And I remember him telling us he prayed for his daddy every day for 17 years. And one Sunday, he was preaching in his church, and he looked, and his daddy was sitting out there. And when he gave the invitation, at the end of his sermon, his daddy stepped out and started coming down the aisle. And he said he didn't even get halfway down before I met him. 17 years, every day, for his dad to be saved. And so, yes, trust the Lord that He is working. A lot of times in ways that we can't even see in our life or in other people's life. I mean, how much of this could Joseph see until it happened? Or you think he would have even imagined that because of this famine, his brothers would come to him? It was all God's doing, wasn't it? So, the part that is up to us is to what Jim said, trust God and His work, and then when He does something, see it, and accept it, and yield to it, and go along with it. What was it about Joseph that allowed God to turn evil to good and allowed God's will to be done? What did we see? What's something you would say that was true about Joseph that allowed God to work this out and bring it to this point?
No matter what happened to him, he stayed true to God.
That's right. He stayed true. He stayed faithful. And that was my main thought, Sherry, is that Joseph's part in this, for God to do this, was that he stayed faithful. Even when it was extremely hard. And I think a lot of people would have just said, everybody's forgot about me. God's forgot about me. He's left me in this prison 2 years ago. I interpreted these guys' dreams. They're right there with Pharaoh. They forgot about me. Forget this. But he stayed faithful to God in everything. All right, any other thoughts about that before we look at the scriptures?
You wonder if Joseph ever believed the visions that he had told his brothers earlier in life.
If he thought about me.
Yeah, if he thought about it, because, I mean, he was telling them, and I don't know if it was to puff himself up, or if he actually believed that.
Yeah.
And now, when it's coming to fruition, it's like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, and we will see that even in this chapter tonight. Whether he thought about it in all those years and thought about his dreams, because he was a little bit arrogant when he first told it to his brothers and his father. He was a little arrogant in that. But he was just telling the dreams that God gave him. We don't really have any indication whether he thought about it, but there will be, in the part that we read tonight, in this chapter, some indication that he and his brothers were remembering that dream and that prophecy. All right, well, let's read the first 5 verses. When Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Indeed, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down to that place and buy for us there, that we may live and not die." So Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers. For he said, "Lest some calamity befall him." And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed. For the famine was in the land of Canaan. So in this, Jacob sends his 10 sons, and he says, "What are you doing looking at each other?" It's like, Why are you standing around here? We're dying of starvation. And there's grain in Egypt. What are you waiting on? That's basically what are you waiting on? And so we ask ourselves a question that I've got underlined in that. When do we as families or as a church just look at each other? I mean, there's a need, but we just kind of wait. What? We're waiting on somebody else to do something? Is that what it is? We see something that needs to be done or somebody needs to be taken care of, but we all just look at each other. I had breakfast with a guy, and it's a couple times we've got together for breakfast, and we sort of take turns paying, but I couldn't remember who paid last time, and I don't think he could either. So the waitress came over and laid the ticket down right between us, and we just kind of looked at each other like, okay, who's going to pick it up today? And it was because, it's because we didn't know, we couldn't remember, and so the brothers are sitting here, and there's nobody says, okay, let's go. I'll get the camels ready, I'll get the donkeys ready, I'll get the sacks ready. You go get this, you go get that. They just all looking at each other, and Jacob's like, what in the world? We're just standing here looking at each other? We're gonna die. Go get it. But what does Jacob do again that he messed up with Joseph and his 10 brothers?
He didn't trust God.
Well, he didn't trust God, but I'm talking about, that is the big picture.
Okay.
He shows favoritism because he didn't send Benjamin. He does it again. He says, y'all go, but I'm not letting Benjamin go. Something bad might happen to him. What does that say to the brothers, to his sons? Well, y'all are expendable. Yeah, that's right. If something happens to y'all, no big deal. There's 10 of you. We can do without a couple of you. And I'm not letting him. What?
He blamed them too.
Yeah, he did. He did.
So this is your dessert.
Yep, that's right. And so he said, some calamity might fall, he might get hurt. But what was God's plan? Again, this is Jacob not being the father he ought to be, showing favoritism and not trusting God. But what was God's plan? Even in Jacob's decision not to send Benjamin. That's what we're going to see. It looks like it's simply Jacob, Israel, showing favoritism. But God has a plan in Benjamin not going along. All right, so let's read verses 6 through 13. Now Joseph was governor over the land. We talked about that last week. He is so powerful in Egypt now. And it was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. What was the dream Joseph had? They would bow down with their faces to the earth. And they don't even know it's him. But they do it. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke roughly to them. Then he said to them, "Where do you come from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered, here it is, Cindy. Then Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them, and said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said to him, "No, my lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are honest men." Don't you think it's a little bit strange that Joseph didn't go, "Yeah, right." But they said, "We are honest men. Your servants are not spies." But he said to them, "No, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said, "Your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And in fact, The youngest is with our father today, and one is no more. So what did they think had happened? They thought he was dead. But you know, this is God's sovereignty, isn't it? This is God working. Of all the places where they could have went, all the different storehouses that they could have showed up at, they end up having to deal with Joseph. So we see God at work, His sovereignty. And what does this teach us about a sovereign God? What should we take from this? That these brothers would come, and then the person that they deal with is the one who's over the whole thing. And I'm sure he's not out there at the grain silos every day. He's over all of it. But they end up coming to the place on the day that Joseph was there and had to deal with him. So what does that tell you about knowing a sovereign God?
Just like God had planned this, God is fulfilling it the same way that He planned it. And you see His hand all along the way of carrying out.
Yeah. And that's a good phrase. I like the phrase, God fulfilled it the way He had planned it. And that's a sovereign God. He has His plans, and He will fulfill His plans. With you as His child, you will go through a lot of stuff in your life that you won't have any understanding of, or why it happens the way it happens, or why people act the way they act. But if we keep walking with Him and keep trusting Him, we will see a God who fulfills the plans that He makes for not just people like Joseph, but for all of us. And honestly, we may not fully understand that until we are before Him and we see Him as He is, and we are made to be like Him. And even though now we're looking through this like hazy, dark glass, then we will know even as we are known. And we'll, in heaven, when we see the Lord and we become like Him, then it will all make sense. I mean, I think there will be a time we may look back and remember things that we could have learned a lot easier or a lot quicker. Have you ever thought that as a Christian? I should have already learned this lesson. I shouldn't be going through this again. How many times have I asked God to help me out of this, or to help me see this in a different way? And He has, but here I am right back again as if He didn't teach me anything. And so there's a lot of things that we could learn a lot sooner than we do. But when we stand before Him, His sovereignty will make sense to us. That as His children, He was working through everything, trying to get us. And what does Paul say to the Philippians? That he's working through everything, and what's he trying to do? What did Paul say? That, I'm forgetting what's behind, and I'm moving on ahead, because this is my goal, to be what He has saved me to be. To be what He has created and designed me to be. So just like He was working on that in Joseph's life, He does the same thing, and He is sovereign over everything that happens in our life. But we have to be like Joseph. We have to trust Him. We have to respond to it. We have to be willing to wait. And we have to believe it. When the brothers arrived, they bowed down with their faces to the ground. It was the fulfillment of Genesis 37:10. And here it is coming to pass. But when they heard Joseph's dream, they hated him for it. But now, not knowing that it's him, they are doing exactly what he dreamed them would. They are bowing down before him. Now, he pretended that he didn't know who they were, and he was pretty harsh with them. And he even accused them of being spies. He knew who they were, but he accused them of being spies and just coming to see what they could get. Why would he do that? Why would he be harsh with them? Yeah, why wouldn't he? Yeah, that's probably the better question.
Tit for tat.
Maybe. But Joseph doesn't really seem to be at that place in his life now where it's get even or get some revenge. I think what happened is this. He wanted to see if they had changed. And he wanted to see if they were sincere about why they were there. If it wasn't still them being against, if they weren't going to be against each other. Maybe he was testing their character to see if they were going to be honest about it, if they were there for the right reasons. And so they were telling him, look, we're good guys. We're not here to cause any trouble. We just came because we need food. We need to take food back to our father. We have another brother. We're all sons of the same man. We have a younger brother. And see, this is where they started to reveal something that Joseph wanted badly to determine what their character was. They said, we've got a younger brother still home with our father, and we've got one that is no more. So yeah, they thought that after they sold him into slavery, then more than likely he was dead, or at least that they would never see him again. All right, let's read verse 14. But Joseph said to them, it is as I spoke to you, saying, you are spies. Now he's being harsh. He was like pointing at it. You are spies. Now he was giving it to them. In this manner you shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not leave this place unless your younger brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother, and you shall be kept in prison, that your words may be tested to see whether there is any truth in you. So you see, they said, we're not spies, we're honest men. He said, I'm going to test you and see if you're honest. Whether there's any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. So he's putting the fear of Pharaoh in them. Because if you're lying to me, if you don't do what I tell you to do, then you're going to answer to Pharaoh. And you know what he'll do with you. So he put them all together in prison 3 days. Then Joseph said to them the third day, do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house. But you go and carry grain for the famine of your houses. And bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they did so. So here we come to the point where Joseph puts them in prison. They're scared to death that they're going to be judged as spies, and there for greedy reasons, that they're not telling the truth about who they are. And he even says he's going to test them. So when we go back and talk about how, our broken relationships, that we want a reconciliation or a reunion, why would we question or test people to see if they've changed? Why would we do that? Why would we, if somebody says, "Look, I've changed. I'm a person that's I'm different than what I used to be, and I'm telling you the truth. I'm not going to do what I did anymore. You can trust me." Why do we question or test people who do that? When would we question?
Words are easily spoken.
Yeah. People will say things a lot of times that they're changed, but their heart's not. They're just trying to get what they want. The church has dealt with a lot of people like that. We have tried to help a lot of people who were in trouble. We have spent a lot of your money trying to help people who were in trouble, and would say, if you just help me one more time, or don't give up on me yet. But then they keep taking advantage of you. And I know I've counseled a lot of people who have had family that kept doing the wrong thing. And sometimes I would say, you got to stop financing you got to stop giving them money. Because as long as you give them money, they'll keep coming back and say what you want to hear until they can get what they want. And until you cut it off, and we've had, I've done that with some people here at church. I've said, look, I want you to come to church. I want you to talk to me. I want to pray with you and go through the Bible with you. But I'm not giving you another penny. Because there's been these times when we've done this and you've wasted it or you've abused it. So I still want to help you grow in Christ, but I need to see if that's what you really want, and we're not giving you another penny. Sometimes you have to say that. And Joseph is questioning them. He wants to see if they've changed. He does remember how they treated him. And even though in his heart he's not wanting revenge, I think he's wanting to see if they're any different.
Plus, you don't want to be hurt again. You're guarding
Yes.
your heart. You
Yes.
just don't want
Yes.
it to go through it again.
That's true. That's true. I'm not going to let you use me again or abuse me or break me. I'm not going to let you break my heart again. I'm not going to believe you until I see some change. And that's what he was doing. They're starting to remember who he is. And they're starting to be sorry for it. Verse 21 says, then they said to one another, we are truly guilty concerning our brother. For we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us. They're remembering now, 20 years ago. They're remembering. He pleaded with us, and we would not hear. Therefore, this distress has come upon us. So what's Joseph hearing them say? They remember now we had our brother, and we mistreated him so bad. He begged us not to do those things to him, and we didn't even listen. We did it anyway. And now God is punishing us. A person has to get to that point.
A confession.
Yeah.
For sin.
Yes. Verse 22. And Reuben answered them, saying, did I not speak to you, saying, do not sin against the boy? And you would not listen. Therefore, behold, his blood is now required of us. But they did not know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter. So here's this back and forth between Joseph and his brothers. And there's a lot of tension, a lot of stress. But God is starting to work in their lives. They're remembering their sin. They're remembering how bad they were to him. And they don't even realize that he's standing right there. And then verse 24. And he turned himself away from them and wept. Then he returned to them again and talked with them. And he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. So Joseph wept. Why did he cry so hard? Why did he have to get away from them? Why was his heart now so tender and broken that he wept? Yeah, they were. They remembered what they did to him. And so he's remembering what they did to him. And it broke his heart. And he emotionally couldn't control it. So he had to walk away and weep. I mean, not wipe a few tears. He had to walk away and weep because of how he felt standing there with his brothers who had sold him into slavery, looking in the eyes of some of his brothers that wanted to kill him and had never been sorry enough to come look for him. But now they make a confession and they're sorry and they're repenting of what they did, and Joseph's heart just melts and he weeps. All right, verse 25. Then Joseph gave a command to fill their sacks with grain, to restore every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. Thus he did for them. So they loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed from from there. So instead of making them all stay and one of them going back to get Benjamin, now he just says, I'm going to keep Simeon. He was the second oldest. I'm going to keep him, and you go get your brother. I'm going to keep him as a prisoner. But the rest of you, we're going to load your donkeys up with grain, and you go back and take care of your family. But I'm going to keep him here as a hostage until you come back with Benjamin.
Wasn't Simeon the one who decided to put him down in the hole?
Yeah. Reuben's the one who tried to talk him out of it. I think it was Reuben that really led that thing not to kill him.
Yeah.
And so he let him go back, but he kept Simeon as a hostage. And why? Why would he do that?
I think some of the human part of him came out,
Yeah.
you know?
But what was the real, what was he weeping for? And what did he really want? More than anything, it seems, as we read this story. He wants to see his little brother.
And that's his only true brother.
That's his only true brother was Joseph and Benjamin. And he wanted to see him so bad that he wept. He wanted to see him so bad he kept Simeon as a hostage, and he thought maybe this would do it. And he knew that the famine would last for 7 years and that they were going to need more grain. So they would have to come back. Verse 27. But as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey feed at the encampment, he saw his money. And there it was in the mouth of his sack. So he said to his brothers, my money has been restored, and there it is in my sack. Then their hearts failed them, and they were afraid, saying to one another, what is this that God has done to us? What is this that God has done to us? Well, now, if they were honest and their lives had truly been completely changed, what would they have done right there when they realized that what they were supposed to pay for the grain was still in the sack with the grain? What would they have done? It was the first night away. They weren't that far gone. They would have turned around and went back and said to Joseph, or whatever they would have called him by, his Egyptian name, they would have said there's been a mistake. They had already said, we're honest men, we're not here as spies. So he's testing them again. And they've got their money, but they're afraid to go back because they're afraid of what might happen to them.
But look how they blame God.
Yeah. And why do we do that? Why is our reaction like theirs when we face something that we can't explain or we are afraid of? God, why are you doing this to me? I know we have those thoughts and feelings. Most people do. God, why are you doing this to me? Why me? Why now? Why us? In counseling, I've had people say, Pastor Gary, I have tried to do right. I have tried to live for God. I go to church. I give. And then their last thing will be, why is God letting this happen to me? It might be something with their marriage. It might be a sickness. It might be something with their family. I have tried to do right. Why is God letting this happen to me? Same thing these guys said. What is God doing to us? Verse 29. Then they went to Jacob. So they went on home, their father, in the land of Canaan, and told him all that had happened to them, saying, the man who is Lord of the land spoke roughly to us and took us for spies of the country. But we said to him, we are honest men. We are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father this day in the land of Canaan. Then the man, the Lord of the country, they recognized his authority, said to us, by this I will know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me. Take food for the famine of your households and be gone. And bring your youngest brother to me, so I shall know that you are not spies, but that you are honest men. I will grant your brother to you, and you may trade in the land. Then it happened, as they emptied their sacks, that surprisingly, each man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. Because what did they think? That the Lord of Egypt was going to think? You are spies. You came and got the grain and you kept your money. They don't know how to figure this out. They don't know what's going on. And Jacob their father said to them, verse 36, you have bereaved me. You think Joseph is rough on his boys. Jacob's pretty rough on them too. You have bereaved me. You have just made me so sick. You brought so much sadness into my life. Joseph is no more, so he's bringing he's bringing that back up. Simeon is no more, so he's thinking, look, by what you've done now, not only is Joseph gone and dead, but now Simeon's going to rot in prison. We'll never see him again. And you want to take Benjamin? Can you imagine? You got rid of, because of you, Joseph is gone, Simeon is gone, and now you think I'm going to let you take Benjamin and go anywhere with him? All these things are against me. So what did he say? What's he say? Here's how you disappointed me, and the whole world is against me. Everything is going wrong. Nothing's going right. I can't win for losing. That's what Jacob is saying. Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, and this is crazy, but he thought, I've got to do something for my father to honor him, to like me again. I got to make up for this. So what does he say? Because you've lost 2 sons? Reuben says, kill my 2 sons. If I do not bring him back to you, put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. And he's talking about Benjamin. He said, look, I'm going to put my 2 sons up as payment. If you will let me take Benjamin and go back to Egypt, and I don't bring him back to you, then you kill my 2 sons. But he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. Here, Jacob, he's saying, y'all not really his brothers anyway. Again, y'all not really his brothers anyway. This is the only brother he's got right here. If any calamity should befall him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. So he said, there's just not anything you can do, and I'm never going to trust you again. So the question that I've got underlined in that last paragraph, he's talking about Jacob. He will not act in faith, and he's suffering because of the loss of his sons. He's suffering because of the famine in the land, and he finally is so bereaved and so down, he says everything has gone wrong. Now, when our trouble is that deep, if we're ever there, have you ever been in such deep trouble and you feel like everything's going against you, and that if anything could go wrong, it's going wrong? Do we act in faith or do we blame? Jacob, Israel, father of the Jewish nation, in this situation, at this time in his life, could not or did not act in faith, but he blamed his sons. He said, I'm going to go to the grave with my gray hair because of you. Accepted no blame, no responsibility. He didn't say, okay, sons, look, we got a lot to deal with here. We got to we got to do the right thing. Let's pray. Let's do everything we're supposed to do. Let's find out what God, the Almighty Yahweh, Jehovah, let's find out what His will is in this and do it. He didn't say that. He said, God's forsaken me. Everything's against me. I'm just going to die with my gray hair. And it's because of you. So we have that choice, don't we? We can either act in faith in areas that we don't understand, and our sorrow is so deep that it's difficult. We can either act in faith or we can cast blame. His lack of faith, though, the last sentence in that paragraph, Jacob's lack of faith will postpone, but it will not prevent God's perfect will. So let's remember that. Any other thoughts that you have, or comments or questions about this story? We'll go on with it next week, and when they return with Benjamin. And this is a great Bible story.
I think it's kind of interesting that Jacob still don't know what happened to Joseph.
Yeah.
I mean, they still hadn't confessed to what really
What
happened.
really happened?
So they're holding the secret.
Yeah.
That will eventually come out,
Yeah.
which will be kind of interesting to see
Yes.
what he would say when he finds out what they really did, what he waited there for all those years.
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, right in the middle of the story now, and they're holding it back, like you said, but the truth's gonna come out.
And I think, but the other thing, Barry, I think, is right in the middle of their daddy telling them, you bunch of knuckleheads, we starving to death, and now y'all done this to me, and I'm gonna go to my grave. Oh, Daddy, by the way, we killed our young brother. I don't think I'm gonna say.
That's not the time.
That's not the time to say it right now, yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't seem to be able to do anything at the right time, did they? They were never doing the right thing at the right time.
I don't think we'll tell it right now.
Yeah, they're all looking at each other like, be quiet, don't you say anything. Yeah. A great story and a lot that we can learn from it for our lives today. Thank y'all for being here tonight. Thank you for your faithfulness. Whether it's Sunday or Wednesday, thank you that you're faithful. You're not just here when you can do something, but you're faithful. And I'm grateful for that. Will somebody volunteer to lead us in prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Lord, I'm grateful for these brothers and sisters here tonight, for how they love you and how they love one another. I thank you for them each and every day, Lord. Lord, I lift up all these on the prayer list that we talked about tonight. All the ones that's got unspoken things, Lord, let's lift them up to you. Pray that each and every one of us can learn to trust you more and more every day and walk in your will. Protect us in this world that we live in, Lord. Help us to be strong against the enemy and hold our heads up and fight the fight for you, Lord, to be waiting for you, Lord. Protect each and every one of us tonight and bring us back Sunday, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. God bless y'all this week.